Chasing the Sun Season 2 Episode 2. Great episode. I feel it was more of a bridge episode, really setting the table for what's to come here in the last 3 episodes of this season. They were really starting out with the big match was the lead up to the game in Ireland. 2 heavyweight contenders, 2 teams, number 1 and 2 teams in the world going at it. And the match that they highlighted was the game before that, was the game against Romania, which South Africa completely blew the doors off of Romania. So it was one of those games that you just have to get through to get to that major opponent, which was Ireland. But they were setting it up in the beginning where Malcolm Marx, his knee, the horrific knee injury from what it sounded like, where it looks like they were in like a scrum, and his knee, his lower leg and his upper leg both went in different directions and completely just obliterated his knee. And I'm not too familiar of the extent of his injury, but I know it took him out of the World Cup, and that just made the decision where the coaches had to bring in, or Razzie brought in Andre Pollard to come in and fill the gap, a fly half for a hooker. And that created a lot of controversy, a lot of talk within the media space, which was interesting because, you know, Manny, from that last episode, he was struggling with his conversions, not able to convert the kicks, and he was really struggling in that department. And bringing in Andre Pollard was basically his direct competition, but he has been a more accurate kicker over his history. He's pretty much a legend in the South African rugby, but he's also teammates with Manny. And so they have a respect and friendship and camaraderie that they built, but it's still the expectation that they're going to go head to head and fight for that tin jersey, which I really like. So it was one of those unique decisions in trying to really understand the psyche of Razzie, and I'm starting to learn that he's really unorthodox. He likes to play the game differently. He loves to flip it on his head, and that's where that genius mentality comes in, where I've related it to the series prior, which was the season 1, like reminds me of like our American football coach, Bill Belichick, who coached the New England Patriots to several Super Bowls with Tom Brady. Just a mastermind of the game. And if you're not familiar with the coaching style of Bill Belichick, if you haven't seen a documentary about him, he is a true historian of the game of football. He knows the game from the beginning, when it first started, the evolution of why plays and all these things developed and happened, the history. He knows the history of the game, not just the X's and O's, the plays, the players, and things like that. He understands when and why things happened, where they happened, the years, and just he understands the game inside and out. So that's somebody who is just so invested in the game of football from the American standpoint. And Razzie, to me, has that same type of understanding and deep knowledge where he can dig into the rule book in rugby, find those loopholes, just like the loophole that they're mentioning where he did the 7 forwards and 1 back on the bench, bringing in that bomb squad, when the traditional formation is a 5-3 is what I found out. So 5 forwards, 3 backs is that more traditional, normal lineup. But that's the genius aspect of it. Somebody knowing the intricacies of the playbooks, knowing the intricacies of the rule set, and really changing the game and basically uplifting it from its core, right? Because when you get tied to a structure in a system, that's how things are usually done, the standard, and somebody comes in and completely disrupts that standard like Razzie's done. It's so interesting to see, and you can see the controversy that it stirs. People start saying this is unethical, the karma's gonna come back, this, that, and the other. And it's funny because those are like the old heads in the game, is what we call them, like the people who have failed to transform and understand, like, hey, he's not doing anything illegal, he's not doing anything outside of the book. Yes, it's a loophole. Yes, it's not the traditional way of doing things, but it's allowed and it's accepted, and he's leveraging it and completely flipping and transforming the game on its head. And that's how innovation happens, right? When you have a mastermind like that studies the game at such a deep level and has a deep understanding, and that also has the balls, that is willing to try something different, to say, hey, I understand this is how the normal structure of a system works, but I'm going to try it from a different perspective and different standpoint. If it works, amazing. If it doesn't, great. Well, you can always go back to the standard, but we might as well test this hypothesis and see if it's going to work in this traditional system, and just doing something completely different. And that's how games continue to grow, evolve, and that's how minds and old structures and mentalities get broken down when you have somebody from an innovative a new fresh thought perspective completely shift the game and shift the ideology of what you're used to viewing it as, and completely move the lens and say, hey, we've never viewed it from this perspective or tried these different things. And that's where the learning and growth comes in sports. So I'd love to see how Razzie does that and completely transform the game and the you know, the stir that it creates, right? Because anytime things are different, us as human beings, we hate change. We hate switching things up. We're routine beings for the most part. But the growth, the evolution, the human essence of innovation comes from evolving and shifting what we know, like shifting our known and going towards the unknown. And I really love how that is documented here in this one, and seeing how the game is going to continue to evolve, not just from this standpoint where it is today, but as we progress year over year in this game of rugby, and seeing how many more coaches try to adapt the mindset or adapt these philosophies and apply their own thought process on it, and being willing to shift and change and try something different instead of just following the old mundane route that we were taught and that was sort of impressed upon us, so to speak. So that's what I really love about that. And I also feel that what South Africa does incredible, and I've seen it episode after episode starting from season 1 to where we are now, is that Razzie does an incredible job of making things personal. I talked a lot about that on the first part of the documentary of the season 1, where it's that Michael Jordan mentality. They find one thing or many things, or they're searching the web and seeing podcasts, media, finding all these different outlets that have a narrative against them, and he finds a way to, and the team that he has finds a way to make it personal and deliver that message. And like one of the athletes was saying, was it Etzebeth? I'm trying to remember, but he says Razzie does almost the unthinkable. He figures out a way to make you more passionate, more inspired, more of a personal attack or against you week after week. He says last week we thought we were at the highest point, our boiling point, but then he comes the next week and figures out to surpass that boiling point. And that takes a lot of leadership. That's that generalship, and where a man is able to take just one small nugget of information and then basically take that nugget and just keep injecting so much fuel into it, where whether the story's true or not, whether the narrative is built or not, he builds the narrative around just that one piece of information and makes it into this burning fire that is just like unstoppable. And so as they're going into that Ireland match, they went and start making these stories and headlines personal. Like, they're not talking against just us as individuals as the Springboks. They're talking about our entire country. You have to plant the flag and stand up for your family, your children, your parents, your grandparents, the ones who raised you. The entire nation as itself is looking up to us, and you're going to let people come into our backyard and talk about us as a nation? They're not disrespecting just the uniform, they're disrespecting our people. And Razzie does an amazing job of really lighting that fire and stoking that fire and keeping the team just really jazzed up and as the underdogs. He does a great job of not letting their head or their ego get too big. He has a very great job of tempering the team and putting them in check, and still giving them that underdog mentality, that us against the world mentality. And that's crucial to their success from what I'm seeing, and just seeing how the players are adapting to that philosophy and mindset, where they always keep a chip on their shoulder and always find a way to find that enemy that's going to keep them burning to the next stage and improving throughout the process. And that goes into the Ireland game. I know they lost. That game was a back and forth game when you have two titans going against one another. Ireland is an incredibly sound, fundamental team. They don't make a lot of mistakes, and I learned that just from my experience of watching Six Nations this past year. They're a team that plays mistake-free rugby. And when they finally let off the gas or make one little mistake, you have to be able to capitalize on it. And that's what Razzie and the entire management was highlighting, is that we can play physical rugby, we can play strong South African rugby, But the Irish, they're not gonna fold under pressure like some other teams that we play, because they pride themselves, and he's talking about the Irish, they pride themselves on creative rugby, being smart, being intelligent, and creating these opportunities and these lapses in judgment so they can take advantage of. He says, yes, we can play them physically like we do, but the Irish aren't going to fold that way. So we have to play them physically, and we also have to play them smart, and then break them down, and then find those little holes that they leave in the game and take advantage of it, because there's very slight opportunities that we get in these games, and we have to make sure that we capitalize on them. And unfortunate events happened. Manny was still struggling with his kicking, wasn't able to do the conversions. Even Faf, who took over, I saw, wasn't able to convert his place kicks. So it was one of those unravelings in a sense, where they just didn't where South Africa didn't capitalize on the opportunities they had available to them. And by the time the final whistle blew, they were on the losing end of it. But the part that was highlighted the most was that Evan, he was talking about, yeah, they lost the game, but he felt just like, no big deal. Like we're still on the right path. And all the other South African players also had that same mentality of just like walking around. It was like carefree, because they felt like what was pitched to them from Razzie was that Scotland was the most important game. If they win Scotland, the rest of these they'll coast through, and still, on their journey to the World Cup won't be impeded. And that sense of just relax, calm was over the team, but it was almost like they were just complacent in a sense, right? And Razzie saw that. And once he saw that their demeanor was sort of carefree, sort of they didn't really take the situation with a lot of pressure, a lot of seriousness, that's when he completely flipped his lid, and he was just absolutely fuming. And that's the part where you have to re-level set the team, because it happens, right? We start at times believing our own hype, ego kicks in. Yeah, we won the Scotland game, things like that. And as athletes, as teams, that happens to all of us, right? Where we can get complacent no matter how good we are, and we start believing our own hype, and just looking forward to the next match and not taking other things so serious. But Razzie has a fantastic mentality to where he can see his team, they don't have that type of vigor, that type of fuel after losing a match like that, where he says they're walking around happy, smiling, patting each other on the back still. And he just knows how to just like light the room on fire. Walks into that Monday session where they all basically having a debrief, and he completely lit them up, saying, you say this, you say you're tough, you say you care about the country, you say you want to carry the flag, you say you're willing to die for your country, but you're liars, because you're not willing to die for your country. You're not willing to do this because of the showing and the lack of care that you showed after losing to Ireland. And when somebody comes in the room like that and completely rocks their boat in a sense, and not even rocks it, just completely flips it upside down, you're sitting there floating in the current like, what the hell just happened? I was on the ship and now I'm off the damn ship. And Razzie's just had to light that fire under the team. So I'm excited to go into episode 3 and see what that's all about, as far as they're going to have that they have to get resynced. They have to sync up again and find that passion that they found years prior, to where they can get that chip on their shoulder again, right? Where they start understanding themselves and understanding what's at stake for them and what's at stake for their nation, right? Because as they're going through it, he's like, if the players are walking with their head down, they're heroes to the generation that are looking up. Like the way these the players on the field are looked at their heroes that played prior to them. Kids are looking up to them as their heroes. And he's like, if you're walking with your head hanging low, or you're doing this and this, they're going to sense it. They're going to know that. And it's bigger than you at this point. And that's the consistent theme of Chasing the Sun, is having that hope, giving hope to a nation that is going through a very difficult time. And he understands that he has to level set these players and bring them back down in the world and say, this is about our nation, this is about the people looking up to us, and for you all just to be complacent, it's showing a lack of care. And he calls them out on it. So I'm excited to see what this third episode goes into as we get into that one, Qrew. Let me know your thoughts in the comments on what you think of episode 2. I felt like it was a good bridge episode, setting up to the pinnacle that we're gonna reach in this series. But it was one of those where it's just a battle of Goliaths. Ireland against South Africa. Ireland came out on top, and you can see the demeanor of the South African team is a little bit like more carefree at this point, which they're not used to having that type of demeanor. And so I'm interested to see how this unfolds as we get into the World Cup matches and get into the final. This was the best episode by far of the series, starting or ending with drama, right? It's just like a dead stop at the end in the France game. But before all that, as we start the episode, we have the match where they're playing Tonga, and it's picking up where we left off, where the team the team got complacent. South Africa got complacent the game prior on the loss to Ireland, and Rassie just wasn't having it. He was just like, sort of just put a boot in them, man, and just let them know that their ego was the distraction, that where they felt bigger than the game, they felt bigger than the nation, and it was all about self. And so he promoted some players. Oh man, I just lost his name for a second. He promoted Bongi to the quarterfinal, said, "You're good to go. Cheslin, you're good to go. Other players, good to go." And everybody else had to fight for their spot. And it was like one of those moments like, what the hell just happened? And so it was like a reflection point where Sia was looking at himself saying like, am I truly like selfish? Do I have that much ego? And I imagine the other players as well, but they only highlighted Sia in that conversation. And it was one of those moments that you need as a team, where the coach uplifts you in a sense. There's like uproots you, not even uplifts, uproots you, where you got comfortable, you started believing your own hype, and now he's there to level set you and reset you back and bring you down to earth in a sense. And it was that moment before that Tonga game where you know you're playing a tough Tonga, strong, fast team that is used to physicality. Pacific Island nations and teams, they're very physical, so you're not going to beat them from a physicality standpoint. And that's when it went into, you're going to beat them on the conditioning standpoint. They may not be the most conditioned teams, so it's about beating them, playing them that hard 40 minutes. Then after that 40 minutes, they start to fall off because their conditioning isn't all the way there, and then they start to accelerate and pull out of that game. So that was like sort of the methodology that I was picking up from what I was hearing on the beginning of the documentary going into that game. And then we had the highlight of where they basically did a flashback to Sia completely tearing his knee, blowing his knee out, ACL I believe, and the road to recovery, which was 4 months before the World Cup was going to start. And having blown out my ACL in high school, I blew out my ACL and both meniscus. Having that road to recovery and him being able to recoup and regain that type of pace in 4 months is exceptional. It took me 6 months just to get back going, and I would say 6 months to get back where I can play football again, but a full year to where I started feeling comfortable, able to cut, able to stop and go, where I felt like, okay, my knee is in place, it's gonna hold up. The mental side is the biggest part that I had to overcome, was like being confident that I had a cadaver put in my knee. So basically it's somebody else's ACL put in my body to restructure my knee. And I was just having confidence that my cadaver wouldn't rupture and that it was going to hold strong. And so for Sia to come back and get back to recovery in 4 months and play at a high level, to play test match rugby at the highest level you can play it, to recover off an injury like that, the catastrophic, it's insane for him to do that. The amount of resilience, toughness, and belief that he had to do it himself, and to overcome and get that confidence in his knee again, is exceptional. I can only imagine what it took. I know he had his friend rotating the bags in every 2 hours, and having that support system is absolutely beneficial, and having somebody that cares about you that much is super cool to see. Man, it just speaks to his character. It speaks to the type of resilience and perseverance he has as a player, as an athlete, as a man, to be able to tell himself he's going to recover and get back to it, and just actually put in the work to make sure it happened day in, day out, never missing a day, and rehabbing it is exceptional. Because that's the wildest thing about injuries, right? Is that it takes so long to build your body up, you know, day in, day out, lifting, running, getting in shape and all that. But then it takes a split second to lose it all. And to it's like instantaneous. It's just wild how life works like that, right? If any of you have ever had a knee surgery or anything like that, once they cut your leg open, it's almost like you just go back to zero. And it's like all this work I put in to get this thing strong, and one little incision completely derails my my progress, and I'm starting from day one again. It's crazy how that happens. And so for him to overcome that is exceptional. And so we go into that Tonga game where it was just, you know, it's a battle. They're both tough nations, tough men going at it. It's just a physical match. And then it was sad to see Mapimpe got hurt, something like with his eye. I'm not sure of the full issue of what happened there. You have to let me know, Qrew, but the only thing that I can think of, maybe he had a ruptured eye socket, and you'll let me know what happened. I'll also look and see. But what I know is, like, just from fighting, I'm a huge MMA fan and know a bunch of fighters, right? So I know when you get your nose broken, and it's the only thing I can reference. When you get your nose broken, you're taught as a fighter not to blow your nose, because the air will go into your eyes and it blows your eyes up. And so when the trainer told him, I don't know if it was ill-advised advice or feedback or whatever, when he blew his nose, that's when his eye blew up, is from what I saw. So I want to know what exactly the issue was with that. Was it a broken nose or was it a broken eye socket? But I know if it's a broken nose, you're taught to just let your nose keep draining and leaking and not blowing your nose, because once you blow your nose, all the air goes dispersed in your face and your eyes blow up. And so I'm interested to hear what happened there. But it was sad to see him go down and lose his World Cup campaign, because of all the work and adversity he's gone through to get back to that point and play in 2023. And so it's just the trials and tribulations of athletics, man. Like, sometimes, like, you just get the short end of the stick, and it's just unfortunate to see like injuries like that happen. And then well, after like all they talked about all that, I really enjoyed the build up to the game in France. The quarterfinal game in France was the biggest thing. And what I really appreciate, I say it a lot of the episodes, I really appreciate the game film and the film study that goes into the preparation process is what I really enjoy and have a keen eye for, especially as I've gotten older. I really love just the dissection of a play, of an opponent, of an entire strategic mapping, like a strategic mapping, putting your best assets on the field against the next player, the next opponent, and just really figuring out the holes and gaps that go into that. And I really love how they're really putting a focus and highlight on, while the players are at rest, they get time at the beach to interact with the fan base and get some time just to decompress because their bodies are going through absolute hell. The coaches are still back in the office planning, strategizing, and game planning this match, and really trying to break down the holes in the France game. And just the amount of mental pressure, how mentally taxing it is. Physical taxing is one thing, but mentally taxing activities is another thing. Like, when you're just mentally drained and tired and have to spin, just trying to find the smallest inch, the smallest advantage on film is some of the toughest things to do in the world. And that's why that coach was talking about, he's sitting there scrubbing YouTube and scouring it and going through it all night just to find that one thing that he can dissect and take advantage of on the field. That's what I really appreciate about the documentary, is where they give light to the management side of the game and how they're able to cascade that plan down to the athletes, and the athletes to buy in and follow that plan all the way through and execute, because at the end of the day, they're the ones executing the game plan. The coaches can only do so much. They can strategize, plan, and configure players, but it's the players' job to execute on that strategy and plan, and they do it efficiently and effectively, especially speaking of the South African team and in this World Cup instance. And I really like that they've highlighted that and setting up those different plays. I'll get more into that play I have in my notes. It's called the purple play, which is really cool, but it's the humanization of the documentary is what's really cool. And I believe his name is Dion, where they talk about his dad passing and his ability to be able to play through that, right? Because it's a tough thing to have a family member pass, and that roller coaster of emotions, and losing somebody is just one of the hardest things you'll ever have to deal with in the world, especially from my experience of what I know and how I've had to deal with my dad passing a couple years ago. It's one of those roller coasters in life that you go through the grief cycle, and it changes and evolves as you go day in, day out, year by year. And having a moment where he is, in the biggest match of his life, right? He has a chance to play in the biggest game he's ever played in his life. And then back home, his dad is going through adversity, and he has to figure out how to navigate those emotions prior to playing one of the biggest games of his life, but at the same time losing the man he loves the most and somebody he cares about. Those are one of those moments that's just like heart-wrenching, man. It's like, gosh dang, dude, what goes into getting on the field, all of the behind the scenes stuff that we do not get to see, that we're not exposed to, really gives insight and love and just appreciation to the men and women that put their hearts out there in front of the world, right? Because we can judge the plays that are happening. You miss a conversion, you miss a kick, you miss a tackle, you score a try. All that's great, but then when you peel back all the layers and humanize it, like these are men going through their own adversities in life, and some of the things that they have to overcome, whether it's that knee injury, whether it's a broken eye socket, losing a family member. There's so many phases of life and facets that create our human experience that we're all trying to navigate, and it gives me just like so much more of an appreciation for the athlete behind the jersey, because yeah, they may miss a play on the field, but then when you start uncovering and unraveling what's going on in the back end, the mental struggle, the mental battles that they're dealing with, and like taking care of family and losing family, it's a lot of pressure that is placed upon these men to represent not only themselves, but the entire nation. Just the amount of weight that it has to be on your shoulders. And I know, like, it does, and Evan said it best, it's like, you can say it's just a game, it's just another game, but when the odds are stacked that high and so much is riding on the line, you're doing it for something bigger than yourself, and it just becomes one of those things that far exceeds the individual pursuit, the individual's goal. And you're doing it for a much bigger picture. And like he said, his dad passed away, and it's like your motives start to change in life when those transitions happen. And so for him to overcome that and be able to play in the World Cup and still like lose his dad through all that adversity, it says a lot about the character of the man. And just like, I just think it's really cool to see that they've been highlighting that. And another thing that caught my guard was I see why you all in the comments let me know the Butcher, KLA, Curtly Ardenser. The nickname of the Butcher is such a badass name now that I have the context of why and how he earned that name. And it's always the mindset, like, you prepare for your opportunity. You never know when it's going to come. And with Curtly Ardenser, not seeing his dream come true initially of him making the South African rugby team, or not getting the shots that he felt like he should have been getting, then having to go work and wait for that opportunity and hope that it comes to fruition by going to be a Butcher is absolutely exceptional. When you start seeing the stories and the journeys that these men go through just to get on the field and to play for the nation's team, it's absolutely exceptional. And it's like, it gives me so much of an appreciation of like, man, we come from so much of a diverse background. We all have our ups and downs, our trials and tribulations, and for the culmination of these athletes to come together at this certain point in time, for them to achieve their dream and their vision, is so inspiring and motivating to see. Because when you look at them on the field, it feels like, we're seeing the manifestation of all the hard work like in front of us. But the documentary gives us an insight like of what it took to get to that point, all the years, all the sacrifice, the family that sacrificed their time, money, energy, effort to get this man to where he is, all of the communities that pushed this individual to get on the field. And it's like, it really does take a village. It really does take a village. It takes a nation to support these men to achieve their dreams. Like, yeah, they're living their individual dream out, but the amount of people that helped cultivate and support and influence that dream even further to keep the person inspired so they can play that game is absolutely exceptional. And I'm really loving like the backstories, the threads of what's happening, and it's just really beautiful to see how it all comes together. It all comes together, right? And it's wild how we can all come from different walks of life and circumstances and this and that, and then come together and create something so magical, so beautiful, that it's binding, that brings nations together, that brings fans together of all walks of life, where we can sit and enjoy and share and really just respect the pageantry of the game and the life and vitality that it brings to all of us. Like they said, they interviewed a South African, and he was saying, like when you have to go through a tough Monday, you have something to look forward to on that Friday, knowing that rugby is coming up. And that's that thread of hope that's woven with sports in general, right? And it's just great to see how it means so much to people, how much it means to nations, and how seriously it's taken from the standpoint of where you're in the locker room with Razzie and all the athletes. It's not falling on deaf ears. They understand the importance of what they're doing and how much of an impact it has on everyone outside of themselves. And it's just so beautiful to watch for me. And I just think it's so cool how the game planning came into respect with that purple play. How that coach identified that one little nuance of where you could take that advantage, and they developed that purple play where they went sort of in hiding. They're covering up all the cameras in France. They're doing it in closed quarters where they're setting up that structure, planning, practicing, and then getting to the game and absolutely executing it perfect is beautiful to see, right? It looks like when you're watching a match, like, man, this stuff is just, if they just do it so effortlessly. It looks so effortless when they do it, but then you get to see all what it took to get that play from the inception of the coach thinking about it, watching YouTube videos, to them planning it, practicing it, and executing it in real time. It's so cool to see how that came together. I have a lot of love for Eben Etzebeth, right? I watch videos on as a new in the rugby space where most YouTube videos are looking at, you see Eben the enforcer, like this guy who it looks like he's just beating people up and knocking teeth out left and right. And then I get to see the humanized brand of who Eben really is, like the kind, generous, nice man that he is, not taking a lot of penalties, but standing up for his fellow teammate. And I really love how his character is. An incredible man, and it's not what I saw on YouTube where this guy looks like he's just wringing everybody by the neck. I can see how like sort of like a gentle giant he is, but when he's in competition, that man is ready for war. And that play where he made where France is pressuring him, like France scored a try within the first 3 minutes of that match, and they were pressuring, they were attacking the score on the left wing, and then as France is pushing it out to the edge, passes to the edge, Eben just sticks his hand out, gets that claw out there, and knocks the ball back. He doesn't knock it forward, he knocks it back and creates the advantage and stops France from scoring, which would have put them up 14-0, which probably would have been, the kiss of death in a match that close with because the two incredible nations playing each other. France is a dominant team and South Africa is a dominant team, but a team like France gets up 14-0 on you in their home city and their host, that's hard to come back from, right? And for him to have that awareness and that positional awareness and make that play happen, and just the luck to where the ball bounces back and saving his team, it's cool to see how those plays transpire. One thing that just sort of came to mind right now was the atmosphere in France. The fans are singing their anthem. They're singing Marseille, and they're singing their battle cry. Like, it's just an electric, overpowering, loud atmosphere. I loved how Razzie, it's the small things that I'm really appreciative of. He's walking around the practice with his speaker, blasting their anthem on repeat, boom, boom, day in, day out, on repeat, until his players get sick of it. And like they said, they know the song so well themselves, like they could sing it. Those little tactics and gamesmanship and preparation activities that we're not seeing on a day-to-day basis, that is super cool. And it's awesome that Razzie has that mindset to build that atmosphere and apply that pressure on his team, that planned pressure. So when they finally get into that atmosphere, that moment, it's almost like when you're sitting there visualizing, you want to put yourself with the feelings, emotions, smells, thoughts, taste. You want to actually be in that moment. And when you're visualizing, and Razzie does an incredible job of helping his team visualize and feel that moment, like every little facet of that moment. So when they get to that moment and have to live it in the present, they feel like they've already done it before because of what they practiced and they visualized. I thought that was super cool, and I really appreciate the mindset, my mindset behind that, and getting his team prepared with just those little things, those little tactics that continue to forward what I say, his genius, right? Those little things are huge keys to make a team very successful. Just those little inches that you can gain on the opponent, those little advantages. And Razzie does a really fantastic job, and his entire staff, of pulling those threads and making his team as prepared as possible. One of the two highlights that I'm thinking of, that I have written down, of before that, the dramatic cutoff of the France game for the continuation on episode 4. You already know, Qrew. I have love. Cheslin Kolbe is my favorite player. Just something about him resonates with me ever since I saw him on the first highlight I ever saw him. It's just it's a feeling I have about him. Like, it's something resonates well with me about Cheslin Kolbe. He's my favorite player by far. When they were explaining the charge down, how that play unfolded, and I saw the highlight and I was like, wow, I've never seen anything like that in my life, in my entire time of watching rugby, and I've never seen it done. And looking at his own teammates and how they're in that huddle after they score, and they're talking about it, and Cheslin just strays out to the edge, and he already knows. He's done his own research and analysis on the step that the French kicker is going to take. And he's like, I know he's going to take a five step drop, move 5 steps to the left. He's going to look at the post, look at the ball, then relook at the post and take that gather step. Then I can take off. Having that type of detailed analysis and advantage on your opponent is absolutely incredible. And for Cheslin to execute that, like, we know his speed is unmatched, right? Van Niekert is his cousin, the 400-meter world record holder at this point. Just an exceptional family line and heritage line that they come from. For Cheslin to make that play happen, the amount of study, research, and the ability to pull that off with his speed and everything was exceptional. I know I was in awe of that moment. I know that you say you were in awe of that moment, but his teammates were in awe of that moment. Like, nothing you have ever seen in your life at this level of professional rugby. Absolutely incredible how those little moments create lifetime memories. They create the history of that player, the history of that moment. That's what creates all-stars and Hall of Famers and just absolute legends and icons in the game. And I love how they just talk about how Kolbe just has that never give up attitude. Since he was a kid, he was told he was too small, couldn't play the game, and he just always has that belief and vision in himself. And I find that absolutely incredible. And the second thing that stood out to me was that chess match. They know France is a kicking side just because Antoine Dupont, he created that law, the Dupont law, right? Where they kick it back and forth and go back and forth on kicking. But for Razzie to say, we know they're going to kick it, and France's forwards, they're sitting in the middle. They don't move. They just sit there, look, they watch the kick, go back and forth, and watch the volleys happen. But they're recouping. They're getting their energy back. They're getting rejuvenated, not wasting energy and just regaining their energy. And Razzie says, you know what? Instead of letting them regain their energy, to hell with it. We're going to get the ball, we're going to call a mark, and we're going to call a scrum. How badass is that? How badass is that call, right? Was it Manny Libbok that caught the ball? He catches it, calls the mark, sets up the scrum. That's such a iconic badass moment where in that you just say you take the cuteness out of the game, right? And you just go mano a mano, you go head to head, and you just put brutes on the line and you fight as who has the most strength, who has the most willpower, and we're gonna figure it out right now. We're not gonna do this kicking back and forth and play into France's game. We're gonna put it in our hands where we call ourselves the strongest scrum in the entire world, and we're gonna put the pressure on them. I think that call is absolutely incredible. The amount of intel it took to make that come to fruition and for them to execute it and make their plays happen is so cool, Qrew. I think this was like my favorite part of the documentary. This episode was my favorite episode of the documentary so far, and how they're just building it up. And they had that epic ending where it just stopped in the middle. It just fades to black, and now we're gonna have to wait till episode 4 and see how the France game ends. We know how it ends, but all the drama that happens within it. You have Etzebeth is sitting in the sin bin right now on a 10-minute yellow card from a high hit. and I'm excited to see this crew. I'm absolutely loving this documentary, and I'm loving doing these reviews. I hope that you're enjoying these reviews as well. Just little thoughts that I'm having as I'm watching it and just trying to dissect it as much as I can, and just really give it the appreciation that it deserves. And it's just cool to see the ins and outs of the game and what makes all of this come to fruition, from the management side, coaching, the players, and the families and nation supporting all these men as they battle on the field. So it's so cool to see, crew, and I appreciate y'all being here as always. And if you haven't already, drop into our descriptions and check out our Discord. Drop into our Discord, say what's up. I call it my QSN pub. We're sitting there talking shop, talking about rugby, sharing pictures, videos, sharing videos that we want to talk about, and just having a little chat, crew, like we're at the pub, and connecting with one another offline. So hit the link in the descriptions, check out our Discord, drop in and say what's up, and I will catch you in there, and we will see you on the next episode of Chasing the Sun. We're watching episode 4 upcoming. I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here as always, crew. Always stay laser focused on your dreams and your vision, and remember that you're in control. Love you. Peace.